Okay. Uh, in uh, in the other diaspora, the Assyrian diaspora, and we continue with Tobit's story in a downhill motion, downhill trend here. Perhaps the epitome of irony here. The man who is so careful with helping other people that he helps bury the dead. And we had that overemphasis perhaps on that mitzvah of burying the dead, emphasizing that of all the things you can do for another human being, that is the most noble, that is the most altruistic, because you don't expect to be rewarded for that. Um, yeah, okay.
Is that still a part of the ethos in the Jewish community at large, or
Yeah. The name, what we call Chevra Kadisha, I think I perhaps mentioned this, the Holy Society, is the Jewish burial society is called Chevra Kadisha in Aramaic, the Holy Society. There were other holy societies, by the way. This was a parallel development. I don't think just in Europe, but I certainly know about it from Europe, where Jews were not allowed into guilds. And guilds were not just a professional framework, they were also a social framework. So they
Mhm.
set up their own guilds, guilds of mitzvah. And so one of the guilds, the Chevra Kadisha, Holy Society of providing for bridal dowries. There was another holy society for saying the Psalms, another one for visiting the sick. And interesting, all these things, saying the Psalms, visiting the sick, taking care of the dead, who did so in the Christian world? The brothers and in the Catholic world, at least, the brothers and sisters of the orders. And so it's an interesting reflection of you, but you don't have to devote yourself to the order, to the monastic order. You do this as a community member. It's I had a class on this development. I think I wrote a paper in rabbinical school on this. It had a huge influence on me and my approach to congregational life in Israel, which was less to and in training rabbinic leadership, which is less to train, for instance, chaplains, but to train all rabbis to to pass on to their congregants the need and the obligation to visit the sick and to pray with them. So, and I see this locally in Palm Springs. Most of the chaplains are not ordained clergy; they're volunteers. And while I don't think they're doing it as part of their community as much, they have that religious calling to do so. I actually think that's a better approach than burdening the rabbi of a synagogue who's got a zillion other things to do, to be doing this as well. But burying the dead is called, of all those things, is called Gemilut Chasadim, that is acts of loving kindness, and that adds on Shel Emet, of truth, meaning that of all the other acts of loving kindness, you might get paid back, repaid someday, but you won't be
interesting?
repaid for
Love
this.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, my wife Sasha is part of the Chevra Kadisha in Palm Springs. It's run by Chabad, and she participates in the purification of the bodies. That's what the Chevra Kadisha do in modern day mortuaries. They purify the body, wrap them in shrouds. In Israel, they're far more active. They do all the burial part, the grave digging, or maybe they've got somebody else who actually, but the burying of the body, the running of the service. It's actually difficult for non-Orthodox rabbis to officiate at a funeral in most places in Israel for that reason, because the Cover Kaddish is Orthodox. So we set up, with time, the liberal movements have set up their own Cover Kaddishas, their own burial societies in different places. So back to this guy, this Tobit, um, name in Hebrew, most probably Toby, um, and he's done all these things. He's married to Chana. Here, her name is Anna, but it's Chana. That's what the Greek reflects in the Hebrew. And we left off with something that I call the theological aspect of the book of Tobit, in that in doing these different things that he focuses on, helping other people, he's lifting up the image of God in each human being. It's kind of a humanistic theology, but theology nonetheless. We will have some angels later on in the story, so there's other parts of theology. There's prayer, uh, and now today we have the observance of an important holiday. So, Ajit, if I could ask you to read from verse 1 to 2.
In the days of Esar Haddon, I returned home, and my wife Anna and my son Tobias were restored to me at our festival of Pentecost, which is the sacred festival of weeks. A good dinner was prepared for me, and I reclined to eat. When the table had been set for me and an abundance of food placed before me, I said to my son Tobias, "Go, my son, and bring whatever poor person you may find of our kindred among the exiles in Nineveh, who is wholeheartedly mindful of God, and he shall eat together with me. I will wait for you, my son, until you come back."
Okay. For those that grew up in the Jewish tradition with the Seder and the words that accompany the Seder, the Passover Seder, this sounds a lot like that.
Mhm.
First of all, it's so what is Pentecost? Pentecost means 50. It's the Greek name of the holiday we call Shavuot, weeks. It is called in rabbinic literature either Shavuot or Atzeret, which means the ending of the counting or the gathering at the end of the counting. It's not called 50. That's a Greek thing. I mean, it could have been called in Greek-speaking Jewish communities, but not in the rabbinic world, um, and um, and not in Qumran either, I believe. In Qumran, Shavuot had an important in the Dead Sea community had an important status because it was the annual renewing of their covenant. Um, so the holiday, as many of you know, begins in the Torah by meaning the end of counting 7 times 7, 7 weeks of days in between the beginning of the barley harvest, and the next day that's when Passover was called. Before it was given a constant date, a solid date in the calendar. It's when the barley was ripe enough to pick. And that took 7 weeks, the barley and then the wheat. And at the end of those 7 weeks, then there was a festival of first fruits. From that time on, first fruits of the trees were brought to the temple as well. All this revolves around the temple. In those 50 days, there was a measurement called Omer, and that's how the days were counted by bringing and offering that measurement of flour or of grain up as a sacrifice. We call that today Svirata Omer, the counting of the Omer. Now, it doesn't have the date that it got afterwards, the sixth day of Sivan. That doesn't come until later, although that's around where it comes out. This reflects a different way of a different calendar, a slightly different calendar. In ancient Israel, there were calendars that were based solely on the dates, that is, the moon, the new moon. In this case, there was also influence of agriculture, whether it was ready or not, to begin to pick the things. And so that's what the holiday symbolizes. Shavuot means weeks, 7 weeks. But at some point in the second century BCE, as reflected in the Book of Jubilees, that I think we'll see from time to time in our studies, um, we begin to hear of another reason for that holiday, not just an agricultural reason. See, the Torah has an agricultural reason for Pesach, for Passover, is it's the beginning of the grain harvest. Also has a historical reason, the Exodus from Egypt. Sukkot, Tabernacles, has an agricultural reason, which is the end of all of the agricultural year and celebrating that everything is now in storage and now we pray for rain. But it also has a historical meaning in the Torah already, which is that commemorates the wandering of the Israelites in the desert for 40 years in the
Sinai.
wilderness for 40 years. Shavuot in the Torah doesn't have has only an agricultural reason, but sometime first century BCE, it's given historical, and the historical is the giving of the law at Sinai. Now that works out with the narrative more or less, not maybe by the day, but in how it's described in the children of Israel leave Egypt in the middle of Nisan, the first month, and then they travel and they get to a place, and then That's when God shows God's self at Sinai. So you could infer from that that it's the sixth day of Sivan, but that's not written in the Torah itself. And so the historical aspect is reflected really later on in rabbinic literature and in some apocryphal literature. Back to here, we have no way of knowing really what Pentateuch Pentecost meant for the author of Tobit. I don't think we have a way, but we can see how he relates to it and how he describes it, and it feels like he's describing it very similar to Passover. You recline. One of the things of the Passover laws is you have to eat the matzah and drink the wine while you're reclining because we're imitating those free people that they eat on these kind of what do you call it, like a couch kind of a thing. A piece of furniture was not an upright chair, for instance, which is why we recline. We invite guests, poor people, those who are in need. We say at the Seder, Kol dichin yetei ve'echol. Every needy person should come and eat. Whether that happens or not in real life, that's another story, but that at least is in the text, and that's in the laws of Passover. It sounds like it's a Passover festival. So we have two ways of interpreting this. One, that this really is Passover, but it got mixed up with the name. I'm not so fond of that interpretation. My way of understanding is that Tobit was so devout, was so pious, that even on Pentateuch, when not commanded to do that, that's what he did. It took a long time, a fancy meal, and he had guests over, and he reclined. One way or another, this is the situation. We can picture him in relative wealth, or at least plenty around, and he sends his son out to say, we want to have poor people at the table.
I'm just thinking aloud here. I have been invited to many a Seder dinner. I guess they look at me and say, this kid looks needy. Let's invite him in.
Well, some people are needy in financially, and some people, Ajit, they're needy socially, you know. Maybe that's
That's
why you were
true.
lonely.
That's true. Okay. All right. I go with that.
I say with humor. Okay. So when in the Christian ear, to the Christian ear, when you hear Pentecost, what do you think of?
Easter?
No,
No.
Easter is Passover.
Passover. Yeah, that's okay.
Well, you think of the giving of the Spirit and kind of the reversal of Babel of the tower, or but I do think the giving of the law is kind of part of that. That I think there's a correlation there that Luke is trying to make in Acts, don't you?
Yeah, I also, I mean, it has a lot to do with we're on the precipice of something important. It's Pentecost.
Hmm.
Because in Acts, right, that's the beginning of the real story of dissemination of Jesus's word, right? If I remember correctly, to the diaspora. But yeah,
Hmm.
we talked last week about horizontal and vertical. There's very much a vertical understanding, yet no yet. That's all I have to say. Anything else?
Um,
Isn't Pentecost looked at the birth of the church?
Well, I think that's from Acts, right? Wouldn't that be from the scene in Acts that we did together years ago?
yeah, it's that's a traditional way the church has thought of it, Don, right? It's the birth of the church itself. Um, I don't know that that's so much in the text, but it came to be understood as a meme for that. I like this phrase, find of our kindred among the exiles in Nineveh who is wholeheartedly mindful of God. What is I guess, is that the Koine for this or the Aramaic? I'm not quite sure what's behind that translation.
Yeah, I'd have to look at that. Where I mean,
A lovely phrase.
we're looking for people who are loyal to our tradition. I guess that we could sum it up like that. Would you agree?
Well, yeah, but wholeheartedly mindful of God. I think that's just beautiful.
It feels like perhaps there are those who are not wholehearted. Maybe those who are, who have drifted. Um, it's not, it's first of all, it's not purely genealogical, right? It's not just bring us some of those people of our own kin who have been exiled as we have. Looking to see if he's got a note here.
This seems like it would be tough to find in Nineveh, though.
Why?
I think of Jonah.
Oh,
Uh,
it could be they changed in those, they had a few centuries to change. Yeah, I don't see any.
Well, it's not critical. I just was curious if you knew right off.
Yeah, no, the comparison that Carrie Moore makes here is in the direction I was going. He's strict. Tobit says, yeah, bring me the ones, but they have to be authentic Jews. They have to be practicing God-fearing Jews with, I think, a knowledge of the fact that some have strayed. They're in the diaspora, just like any diaspora, anywhere. And he compares it to the words of or he quotes Zimmerman, who compares it to the words in the Talmud that says, "Anybody who is hungry shall come and eat," which is with no, there's no condition. It's not conditional, right? As long as
Right.
you are God-fearing and keeping up the tradition. I think it's meant to show that he's strict. Yeah, but otherwise, he doesn't comment on the words themselves. Okay. So, Don, you want to continue with us, verse 3?
sure. So Tobias went to look for some poor person of our kindred. When he had returned, he said, Father. And I replied, Here I am, my son. Then he went on to say, Look, Father, one of our own nation has been killed and thrown into the marketplace, and now he lies there strangled. Then I sprang up, left the dinner before even tasting it, and removed him from the square and laid him in one of the outbuildings at my home until sunset, when I might bury him. When I returned, I washed myself and ate my food in sorrow. Then I remembered the prophecy of Amos, how he said against Bethel, Your festival shall be turned into mourning, and all your songs into lamentation. And I wept.
Okay.
There's a question I want to ask, Rabbi. Um, Under verse 4, it says, until sunset, when I might bury him. Is there a requirement that somebody be buried at or after sunset?
If it's the holiday, you can't bury someone. If
Okay.
somebody dies during the holiday, you've got to let them cover. You've got to close the eyes, close the mouth, put them off to the side, make sure they're in a safe and a respectful place, and then you start to deal with it as soon as the holiday is over. Yeah. So this
Tobias is a bold. He's fearless. He in the face of the empire, right? I mean, he's already been in trouble for this, and now he goes right there in the square. It looks like, and
so
removes
that's
it.
Tobit. That's Tobit is the one
Tobit,
that they,
yeah.
yeah.
What'd I say?
Tobias. Yeah, it's a little confusing, the Tobias and Tobit.
No, I meant Tobit. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. He's devoted to this is his mitzvah. This is absolutely his mitzvah, and he's going to do it. And so much so that he compromises the laws of the holiday to do it. It doesn't actually bury, but to bring the body over, not everybody would do that. Those are things that it's being interpreted here. If we talked about Jewish law as it is reflected here, halacha, the way we walk through life, and in this case, death, you would put the body in a particular place to make sure it's safe, but to bring it into the house, whatever, wouldn't be a usual practice, except for the fact that it's not, if the body stays outside, it's going to be desecrated and it won't be buried. So in that way, you've got a competition of the importance of two different mitzvahs: keeping the holiday, which is like keeping Shabbat, or burying the dead. And when you can't do both, if it was in a Jewish town, you put the body, say, under a bed or under an archway, whatever, and then you come back after the day is over. But here, it's got to be taken into his house.
Well, it looks like verse 5, I assume that's a ritual washing of himself.
Right. When you touch a body, when you have contact with dead bodies, you become ritually impure. That's why you may notice, and the Jewish folks here know, that when you leave a Jewish cemetery, there's usually a station there to wash your hands.
Wow.
Or if you've been to a cemetery and the family comes back to the house for Shiva, very often you'll see a basin with a cup of water at the doorway. That's where that comes from. So it's ritual impurity, which once upon a time meant you had to go and immerse yourself full body. But in these times already, there's no sacrifice to offer. There's nothing. It's a symbolic washing of hands. Yes, Don.
What is it that causes his emotional reaction to eat his food in sorrow? I mean, this is a stranger. What causes the emotional guttural reaction for him to react this way?
Yeah. So I think that, as I said, this is his mitzvah, his special type of piety. This is his calling card, his pious calling card. But it lifts up the dignity of a body who's been created in God's image. This is the theology I was talking about. That's why he so takes it. Look at, how do we, Steve, I'm sure you've officiated at many funerals, as I have. I'm going to say this, and I know it may sound as I'm boasting, and perhaps I am boasting, but I want to illustrate. I do a lot of funerals for people I've never met. So because of the nature of Palm Springs and people that weren't born, the families come in, and of course I interview the family a day or two beforehand, and I hear their reactions and I write it down. And I don't give eulogies. My custom is not to give the eulogy of when the person was born or what school they went to, whatever. If the family wants that, they do that. My custom is to lead the prayers and to put the eulogies in between different prayers, and I lift off of the eulogies what they've said and what I know from the sheet. If they left it out, I add to commenting, connecting it with the text, which is why the text never has a regular order in my ceremonies. I'm bouncing around. It's a little bit different than most rabbis do it. But here's the thing. I cry at almost every funeral I do because I think I've taken in, and that's me also. That happens to be, I'm a cry. We used to say, Ani David ben Sipora bat Leah. I am David, the son of Serene, daughter of Leah. My grandmother, Leah Nana, she cried all the time, no matter what. Leah, isn't that great pizza? She would cry. It's like she just cried a lot. My mother cried a lot, and so do I, more than my siblings, by the way. And so it's just my expression. The way I choose to understand that, and this is in answer to your question, Don, is that I identify with the loss. I identify, even though I don't have the loss personally myself. I somehow am able to. That's how I'm mirroring this. That's what I see in Tobit. That's me.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have a quote from Amos here, from Amos. It feels like we've already talked, I think, about Jonah. He's in Nineveh, right? And you mentioned Jonah, that there seem to be a lot of biblical things in the background, the laws from the Torah. But here's a quote. When you have a quote, so that's one thing you can do. If you weren't sure when this book was from, you can say one thing. You can say, it's certainly after the time of Amos. Okay, that's not a big deal. But it does perhaps say something about what were the canonized books at the time. And there were many prophets. We just don't have them, right? In the same way that there were many or other gospels that we may have or we don't have, but we are not included in the canon. To turn the festival into mourning, I said I quoted this verse on my Facebook page, October 7th, beginning of the war, because it was 10:30 at night our time on Shmini Atzeret, which is the last day of Sukkot, and also called Simchat Torah, the joy of the Torah, because we finish reading the Torah and begin to read it again every year on that date, and that was the quote that I put on this. It just it wasn't prophetic. It was just looking. This is exactly what I feel. And there's a beautiful psalm. I think it's 30 that ends Afachta mispadi lemacholi. You have turned my mourning into a dance. So this awareness that it goes in both directions. But here it's going in the sad direction. Anything else?
Well, and so Amos, how did you pronounce Amos?
Amos.
Amos. He was prophesying against the northern kingdom before the Assyrians came in, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we go on?
Yep.
All right. Sue, are you up for reading today? Sue Spicer?
Sure. When the sun had set, I went and dug a grave and buried him. And my neighbors laughed and said, "Is he still not afraid? He has already been hunted down to be put to death for doing this, and he ran away. Yet here he is again, burying the dead." That same night, I washed myself and went into my courtyard and lay down by the wall of the courtyard. My face was uncovered because of the heat. I did not know that there were sparrows on the wall. Their fresh droppings fell into my eyes and produced white films. I went to physicians to be healed, but the more they treated me with ointments, the more my vision was obscured by the white films, until I became completely blind. For 4 years, I remained unable to see. All my kindred were sorry for me, and Akar took care of me for 2 years before he went to Elimus.
Yeah. Okay. So we go on with the irony of the fact that this pure and pious man gets this rather bizarre punishment of going blind because of the sparrow droppings that fell into his eyes. Don.
Yeah, I was going to say that here's a person that's totally dedicated, and all of a sudden, he walks the plank and falls into the water. It's just a bizarre ending to his piety.
Mm.
So we do have other stories, though, right? About the righteous man and it's bad for him.
Jonah and the whale?
Yeah, well, Jonah though kind of brings it upon himself by refusing to heed God's word.
Mm.
But maybe Jesus, for instance.
Yeah.
I think others. I mistakenly, Amos should have been up before this section here. So, but let's just finish talking about this. I actually looked to see what's going on with the blindness from the pigeon shit. It's like a little bizarre, and it's a thing. It's actually a thing. It's a medical
It
thing.
is?
You can go to the link on the next page where it's not about it's the fact that there are certain bacteria in some birds that carry this bacteria in their droppings, and if that material gets into the eyes, it can cause some sort of a blindness. So whether this is real science or not real science, you can go you can go to this cbc.ca Canada thing, but it's out there on the internet. It seems to be unrelated to the book of Tobit, which is
I'm surprised the bird got him in both eyes.
well, but so symbolically though, what does it mean?
Yeah.
Symbolically, I'm not sure what it means about. He goes blind. Who else is blind in?
It reminds me of Paul. St. Paul.
Oh, Paul.
On the road to Damascus.
Yeah.
Okay. To differentiate, of course, he becomes blind for a different reason, right?
Also, Rabbi, I think one distinguishes between sight and insight.
Okay.
And I would say that losing his sight was horrendous and horrible, but his insight doesn't go away. So,
okay, and the other examples of blindness anybody can think of from the Hebrew Bible? So Isaac is blind in the end of his days. He doesn't see well. So he can't tell. I don't know how this is connected yet, but let's keep it in mind. He can't see well. He can't discern. He doesn't have the insight. Also, he's easily fooled by Jacob and by Rebecca. Another blind person would be Samson. And while it's not, in his case, it's not about insight, but it is about courage and strength, physical strength. In other words, perhaps Samson teaches us that you don't have to be seeing in order to be effective. Certainly not against the enemy.
I just scheduled cataract surgery, Rabbi. I'm going blind too.
Yeah, I think I'm being told every year by my eye person that it's slowly growing and that don't worry yet, but it'll come. So I think it's calling for all of us. Okay.
I do think it advances the narrative, right? It's a piece of the storyline that needs to be inserted, and then of course he gets pretty grumpy towards Anna at the end. But and I do think that blindness and insight and sight is here. It'd be interesting as we get to it what insight or what the blindness gave Tobit in terms of insight. You know, that kind of ability to see deeper, as it were. I don't recall. I'll have to go to that point when he gets healed and at what stage of the narrative that functions. But
so let's keep it in mind. Now let's pretend for a second we didn't look at this and we looked at the quote for the full quote from Amos. It's often in later books when a quote is given, it doesn't mean to necessarily quote just that verse, but wants us to think of the whole context because so many people knew these texts by heart. And because these texts were also read in the synagogue, not one verse, but entire chapters. Yes, Don.
I'm getting the impression that he is moving away from his bond with God in this section. These physical things that are happening to him, we will see later on, have an effect on his relationship with his wife. And it just seems like he's moving away as opposed to moving towards.
Okay, well, we haven't seen the issue with the wife. We'll get to that in a second. Just one more thing. The name that's mentioned here, Achikar, which was hard to pronounce, so is an important name in the history of Jewish literature. There's the tales, the wisdom of Achikar, ancient Jewish versions of wisdom literature, which are connected to the book of Proverbs, connect to other ancient Near Eastern societies, Achikar. Perhaps this Hebrew word, the one who delves down into, who investigates, Chakar, Lachkor. And while it's given here as if that's not important, just somebody who takes care of him, the usage of the name here might have a meaning saying this is connected to wisdom literature. At least there are those scholars who feel that's intentional. But let's take a look for a second now at the quote from Amos. Steve, if you would read, please, from the larger quote, and we'll pretend that we're doing this right after we saw it quoted in the text.
Sure. This is what my sovereign God showed me. there was a basket of figs. I was asked, "What do you see, Amos?" "A basket of figs," I replied. And God said to me, "The hour of doom has come for my people, Israel. I will not pardon them again. And the singing women of the palace shall howl on that day, declares the sovereign God. So many corpses left lying everywhere. Hush, listen to this, you who devour the needy, annihilating the poor of the land, saying, if only the new moon were over so that we could sell grain, the Sabbath so that we could offer wheat for sale using an ephah that is too small and a shekel that is too big, tilting a dishonest scale, and selling grain refuse as grain. We will buy the poor for silver, the needy for a pair of sandals. God swears by the pride of Jacob, I will never forget any of their doings. Shall not the earth shake for this, and all that dwell on it mourn? Shall it not all rise like the Nile, and surge and subside like the Nile of Egypt? And in that day, declares the sovereign God, I will make the sun set at noon. I will darken the earth on a sunny day. I will turn your festivals into mourning and all your songs into dirges. I will put sackcloth on all loins and tonsures on every head. I will make the earth mourn as for an only child, all of it as on a bitter day. A time is coming, declares the sovereign God, when I will send a famine upon the land, not a hunger for bread or a thirst for water, but for hearing the words of God. People shall wander from sea to sea and from north to east to seek the word of God, but they shall not find it. In that day, the beautiful maidens and the young men shall faint with thirst. Those who swear by the guilt of Samaria, saying, as your God lives, Dan, and as the way to Beersheba lives, they shall fall to rise no more.
Now, if we were studying Amos, we'd spend a tremendous amount of time on this. It's a very, very rich and deep text. But can you see why I brought the whole text here? The bad people, so let me put the end of it first. I think that our part of the story, at least, if not more, is a midrash on the text from Amos. It's total speculation, but I wish to speculate, to fantasize that this was the Haftarah reading, this was the additional after the Torah reading, the reading from the prophets, and then comes the rabbi and gives his lesson to the people living in Assyria or living in the diaspora, whenever that might have been, and says, the words of Amos, they're coming to life here in this character of Tobias. And he's the one to teach us. This thing of the figs and all those kinds of prophecies, whether in Ezekiel, there's a lot of them, where there's something solid and God, it's kind of dramatical. It's a dramatical word play, sight play, prophecy. That's what Tobit is for us. He's that prophecy, that living prophecy. When the lights go out for all the people, the sun, the day will turn dark. His life turns dark. The people that are being punished are the ones that couldn't wait for the sun to go down on the holiday or on Shabbat so that they go cheat people. He can't wait for the sun to go down so he can bury people. It seems to me there's a lot of connections here. Go ahead.
On the third line, it says the doom has come for my people Israel. Is this referring to the northern kingdom of Israel?
Yeah.
Versus not Judah, Israel.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
this is
Israel, and hence Bethel is quoted at the end. The only thorny part of that is I didn't spend a lot of time looking at Amos commentaries, but I didn't find in the Jewish commentaries, which are much more accessible to me online, a good explanation as to why Beersheba which is in the south, why that's
Mhm.
mentioned. I'm sure somebody, it could be because it's a place of oaths and they gave oaths, Sheva, Shavua, I don't know. But yeah, and Tobit in this story is living the punishment of the northern kingdom, even though he says, I did it right, but they were the ones who they were unfaithful.
But Tobit is also telling us that even though the Assyrians may have conquered the northern kingdom, he's keeping his connection to Jerusalem in the early stuff we read.
Right.
Mhm.
So he is staying faithful and loyal to his faith.
And yet he still gets punished.
He still gets punished.
Yeah. So perhaps a lesson in collective identity,
Yeah, yeah.
collective punishment.
Mm.
In any case, interesting.
How prevalent was the thinking? I guess it's a Deuteronomistic idea of, you obey, you're blessed. You disobey, you're cursed, or your bad things happen. And
Yeah.
and his keeping of the law to such to the letter of the law in such a faithful, apparently wholehearted and sincere way, he should be rewarded with blessing. Is that in this story right now?
So I think what the story is bringing up that issue. There's a verse in Ecclesiastes, Tzadik v'ralo, Rasha v'tovlo. I may have got it backwards. Of a righteous person and it's bad for him, and an evil person and it's good for him. This kind of irony that we have in the world, this injustice. It's because of those issues that Judaism and Christianity and other religions developed a whole idea of what happens after death. So if the justice wasn't achieved in death, well, you're going to get it afterwards, or you're going to get your reward afterwards, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But here, I think that it's the tension between individual success or lack thereof, depending on their piety, and the individual being part of the collective. You could be as pious as you want, Steve, but if the collective is not, it's going to rub off on you. You're still going to suffer as well, I
And,
think.
and and many things have happened. When you dropped the nuclear bomb on Nagasaki, there were some terrible people who were killed and some really good people that were killed too.
Yeah,
So
collateral damage. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I do
Ajit,
think
go ahead.
of Tobit's piety and his observance of law,
Hmm.
and and how that gets enacted mostly through his care for the poor and care for the unburied, and how that kind of piety contrasted with the piety of the Northern Kingdom that Amos, spoke against. It are the same reasons, it seems, that Jesus spoke against, that same hypocrisy. And yet, at the same time, that's side by side with really good, pious Jews who are living, holy lives without the hypocritical abuse of the poor.
Hmm.
So I love this. Tobit gives us this model piety, and just 200 years before the Common Era, first century, and I just like that tension in the gospel between uh, those who, I'm righteous. Why am I suffering? Why did I go blind? And well, it doesn't have anything to do with your father or your ancestors. It's so God can glorify himself through your healing. I mean, these themes are really resonating with me, and I think will sharpen my reading of the gospel text next time I get into it.
No, good. Don, I think you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say what flashed across my mind was another blind person, a little child, where Jesus said, put spittle on its eyes, whether it was a man or woman, I don't remember, and said, Ephraim, be thou open. I just thought that was another
Right.
sight, hearing.
In both cases, Don, whether in the positive way you're thinking or the negative way here, it shows that something which there's a physical material that's used to implement God's will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Don, why don't you go ahead and read the last section for us?
So
11.
okay. At that time, my wife Anna earned money at woman's work. She used to send what she made to the owners, and they would pay wages to her. On the day, the 7th of Dystrius, when she cut off a piece she had woven and sent it to the owners, they paid her full wages, and also they gave her a goat for a meal. When it came towards me, the goat began to bleat. So I called her and said, "Where did you get this goat? It is surely not stolen, is it? Return it to the owners, for we have no right to eat anything stolen." But she said to me, "It was given to me as a gift in addition to my wages." But I did not believe her, and I told her to return it to the owners. I became flushed with anger against her over this. Then she replied to me, "Where are your acts of charity? Where are your righteous deeds? These things are known about you."
Okay. So what do we think about this?
You have to be kind to your loved ones first before you can be kind to the whole world.
Or certainly at the same time. Yeah.
Huh? All
Or
right.
certainly at the same
But
time. Yeah.
I mean, I think the customs and the traditions of that time about the relationship of a woman um, helping to support a man with a gift from outside was something that was challenged.
Yeah, maybe.
A woman working from the outside, it seems
Yeah.
suspect. But if we know now, we know something about his psyche, though. We've met him. This is the end of the 2 chapters. We heard he feels like such a good man, right? He sees this image of God in others so much so, or he just feels he has to, a lot of people that do mitzvahs are not necessarily nice. Perhaps they think that they're doing it more for God than they do for other human beings. That feels like what's caught up with him here. He's so caught up with his self-righteousness that he can't look a gift goat in the
In the mouth.
mouth, right?
And he may also be having a pity party, right?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
blind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the blindness sets off a lot of fear in a person's life, and when you get into something where you're not comfortable with, you get angry and you don't understand it, and but that's remarkable to me, because I see this man as a holy man, and yet I see him drifting away from holiness by his actions in this section.
So I want to read for you a variety of translations, because the text seems to be a little bit strange when she says to him, "Everybody knows what's happened to you." So the first is Zimmerman, who did an edition of Tobit, a Jewish scholar, I think 19th century. "Behold, your humiliation is well known." Right? Your humiliation is well known. Calm down. Everybody knows you're humiliated. Take it easy. That's my understanding. The Revised Standard Version has, "You seem to know everything." Oh, you're Mr. Know-it-all, right? You know everything. There's a bit of irony or sarcasm there. The new NJB, whatever that is, "Everyone knows what return you have had for them." Everyone knows what return you have had for them. Not sure. New English Bible, "Everyone can now see what you really are like." That what you now everybody sees your true colors. You're really not that nice of a man, I think. Um, New
Or
American
she's
Bible.
calling him to remember who he really is,
Perhaps
like
that's nice.
Abraham. God, you're going to just Sodom and Gomorrah. You're just going to wipe them out. What? what if there's righteous people there? And it's just
Mm.
like that dialogue between people, what are
Yeah.
you doing? Remember who you are.
All right. So the
Did,
New American Bible is your true character is finally showing itself. So that I
Mm.
think that's pretty sarcastic. In other
yeah.
words, anyway, who is this reminiscent of? Perhaps Job. Very much
Mhm.
Job. We hadn't talked so we brought it up in the first
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
and Job's wife and friends. Yes, go ahead, Ajit.
I think it's human nature almost that when you achieve a degree of recognition, some people become humble. Some people become pompous. And I think we kind of go through, all of us go through various stages of this. But thank goodness he's got an honest wife who puts him in his place, like mine does every day.
Yeah, me too.
Do any of the women? I see Sue, you're here. I think owner might well, the one who shows up as owner. I think we might have any of the women want to chime in here? Sasha? Looks like Sasha's on from
Yeah.
Israel. She's in Israel right now. Okay, then.
Yeah.
I did a talk in Houston recently, and I videotaped a piece of it to show my wife because I told Rabbi Steve that I need a person to criticize me, find all the things I said didn't say correctly. So, by the way, Steve Morgan said to send you his regards,
Right.
Rabbi.
Sasha, did you want to say something or you're just listening? It's in the middle of the night for Sasha right now.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Well,
I'm just listening.
okay. All right.
where is she?
She's in Israel with our kids.
Mm.
Haifa?
Yeah.
No.
No, in the Galil,
Mm,
in the Galilee.
okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right, everyone. Don, was there something else you wanted to add?
Yeah. So here is this person that does charitable works for others.
Mm,
But the person that he is intimately connected with, he can't see her charity. He can't see her gift. He doesn't have the insight to see her gift of help to the family and the person of the goat and of food and whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone.
I
thank
know we're
you.
at the end of our time, but Sasha, if maybe next week we can, I don't know what's going on in Israel right now. It just seems like it's silent. I'd like to know the feelings of folks right now with where Israel is. But I know we're out of time, and I'm sorry to ask that so late, but I just, is there hope? Is there progress? What's going on?
Oh, I think I'm not the right person to ask because I'm not so good with words. And I would say that David is will be much better at expressing a lot of those things.
Yeah.
I can
Well,
just
maybe next
say,
week, if we
yeah,
can, David, if you feel like it, that'd be helpful for me, just so I'm tuned in from different perspectives. I just tend
the
to hear from a couple of folks who are just gotten radicalized, anti-Palestinian radicalized.
the village where I am at our daughter's is totally surrounded with little Arab villages, and there's a lot of interaction going on between the people around here in this area. And we just met somebody yesterday who came in with a woman from the Arab village that is right here, and they have a group of women of Israeli and the Arab Palestinian women that meet every month, and they go
Wow,
on hikes together. So
nice.
that's and then at that where I was, there was a young girl who came to volunteer with something my daughter is doing, and I was asking her how it had been for them in the war. And they needed to be in shelters a lot, but she kind of matter-of-factly said that they've had to be on Zoom because they had to go in and out of the shelters all the time, and there's a lot of different things, just simple things like that.
Some seeds of hope.
Yeah.
And by the way, you use words very well. That was good, Sasha.
I hope so. Yeah. But I'm just seeing there's a lot of positive things going on. David will be able to tell you also from a meeting he had this week in Los Angeles. I'm sure he will.
Well, you guys, and Israel's in my prayer always. So
always. Thank you.
yeah.
And we'll begin with some stuff about Israel next week.